This is Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Mike Ramos. He is the District Attorney for San Bernardino County. And I hope you stay with us because over the next 10 minutes, we're going to be speaking about an issue that is just devastating. And it's hitting every corner of California, every corner of our nation. But yet here in Southern California, the problem is most severe. And we're looking at the question of teenage sex for sale.
Yes, teenage sex for sale, or as we call it in my world, human trafficking of our young girls. And it's a huge problem, a problem that people really have kind of turned their back on for several years. And we saw this in my county about 3 years ago. I was approached by one of my lawyers and one of my chief deputies. Hey, boss, we got a problem.
It's interesting because I had the impression that a lot of this teenage human trafficking was focused upon girls being imported into America, put into brothels, and abused. Now, if that was what the situation was, that doesn't make it any better.
No.
But it's not just that.
No, it's not. Research has shown, and my good friend Kamala Harris, the Attorney General, they did a research-based protocol and study, and they found that 70% of these young girls were our own domestic from America.
Which is remarkable to hear. I must congratulate you and your office because you recently produced and have issued a 45-minute documentary. It's called Teenage Sex for Sale. It focuses upon the human trafficking element in San Bernardino County. Chris Lee, who's your PIO, was the producer director. Right. I congratulate Chris. And Chris went, he went guerrilla.
Oh, he did. He did an amazing job with this. And he went guerrilla, as you said. In fact, he and an investigator from the Sheriff's Department, they went undercover and they went to Hollywood to this, they call it the Pimp's Ball, or I forget what they call it, and they all are there and they have the girls that they're trafficking with them, and they went in and they were able to film, and you'll see that on the documentary.
Right. And so what we see though is they may have been in Hollywood, but these girls were brought from the Inland Empire as an example.
Sure, there were some from the Inland Empire, there were some from Los Angeles, there's some from other states, there's some from Nevada, Las Vegas area.
International, presumably.
International as well.
And so what did you learn, what did your office learn through this process, and what is being done to try to combat this just cancer growing in our society?
We learned of the human trafficker themselves. They like to be called pimps. And you'll see it. They say it right on the film that, hey, we manipulate the mind. We take control of these girls and they treat them just like, they're animals. And then we will do what we want with them, and we're going to put them on the streets and we're going to use them, and they make money. And they think that that is their right to do that.
And so many of these girls are controlled through drugs.
Controlled through drugs. They get vulnerable girls that perhaps have had some issues, runaways. They bring them in.
Yeah, why don't you tell us who these girls are?
Sure.
As a general proposition, what's the general profile?
Generally, they're looking for somebody that's vulnerable. They're looking for somebody maybe that's having some problems at home. We're training our police officers, look for the runaways, because that's who they're looking for. They're recruiting them, sometimes even out of high school, and they're watching who they want.
And what's so sad is we know that many of these runaways were in abusive situations at their home, and these pimps are able to become father figures in the early days of this domestic relationship that turns into a horror story.
And that's why we need to change the way we think of these girls. No longer prostitutes or criminals, they're victims. They've been victimized, some of them, since they were little girls, and now these traffickers are victimizing them to the fullest extent, usually by abuse themselves and raping them, and then putting them out on the streets.
And so we're really looking at, and now your office is looking at, a three-pronged approach.
Yes, we are.
We call them pimps, Johns,
right,
and now victims.
Right.
We've learned about the victims.
Right.
We know we're trying to save these young girls.
Right.
You've told us a little bit about the pimps.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the Johns, because
Sure.
that's an element that's baffling.
Well, the Johns, I'm glad you know you mentioned that. It's the whole supply and demand
Right.
area. And by the way, myself and Alameda County DA, Nancy O'Malley, we don't like the term John. There's a lot of good people named John, so why do they get to be labeled John?
Fair enough.
You know, these people are soliciting sex a lot of the times from minors. So we have a Project John because we're going to make it known to the public in San Bernardino County. If you're convicted of solicitation and we catch you, we put you through the process, we're going to put your photo and information on our webpage.
Literally.
Literally. We want the world to see who you are and what you're doing. Perhaps you'll think twice next time, and perhaps somebody else that wants to do that is going to look, you know, I really don't want my face, you know, all over the world about this is what I'm doing.
I think about those Dateline investigations where we
Yes.
saw,
Right.
but in a lot of ways, that's different. I mean, that is men who are bona fide pedophiles, and
Right.
But this is a situation where these women, girls, are being lured into a situation.
Right.
They don't even know what's hit them half the time. So we know the pimps now, we know the Johns now.
Right.
More about the victims.
Sure.
What can we do to help these young women?
Well, we need to look at how we treat them in the system. We just created a vertical prosecution unit for human trafficking. Melissa Rodriguez, one of my lawyers.
What does that mean, vertical? Explain.
Meaning from the time the case is investigated from the police department to the end of the court, one lawyer handles it. And she has a passion, and she is attempting to help these young girls not only get through the court process, but get them, one example, she got one to go back to college, to go back to school.
But you also recently opened an oasis
Yeah.
for these girls.
One of our goals, one of my dreams was to open a home for these girls, a place where they can land. And we got the faith-based community involved, and they opened a home called Rachel's House. And we now have our business community that is supporting Rachel's House. They have a bedroom, they have, you know, your standard place to live, so they're not back out on the streets, because what would happen, the pimps would grab them back immediately.
Right, exactly.
So they have a place to transition, hopefully to help them get back into society.
And can you protect them in terms of creating some form of anonymity, if that's important?
Sure. But for example, I won't say where Rachel's house is located. It is a place, though, where they are safe and they have a place to go.
What can we do, just as members of the public,
Sure.
to help our young girls? I mean, you know, we may see a young girl on the street that's looking down and out. Do we get involved? Do we not get involved? Do we call your office? Sure. And this applies at any corner of California.
Absolutely. If you see a girl, you see girls out on the streets, call our office, go to our website, and there will be directions on where to go and who to contact, and we will get involved, and the local law enforcement agency as well. But that's part of our whole protocol that we've just worked on human trafficking.
But what's unique about your approach, and hopefully it's permeating, is like you said, you're treating these girls like victims and not as criminals.
Right.
But how do we get that out to the girls? Because look, you know, if these girls are on the street and they see a police car drive up, likely they'll run. You know, they'll want to avoid law enforcement interaction.
That's a very good point. We have trained over 7,500 law enforcement officers with this whole process that we're doing now. We've created a coalition against sexual exploitation of minors, CASE, where we have all these departments that are working together, and we're training them how to gain their trust, including our attorneys, because they really haven't been able to trust anybody. And finally, they'll have somewhere to go. You'll see somebody on the documentary, one of these girls that was trafficked, who said years ago, I wish this was in place, because we had no support then.
How are you feeling about the fact that you're able to really effectuate positive change?
You know, I'm feeling good. We're not done. We're going to continue to fight hard. And I should mention the suppression side of it. You know, if we catch you trafficking these girls, we had a recent case in Rancho Cucamonga that the defendant went away for 30 years to life. He was a 3-striker. He physically abused a girl. It's just horrible. This is serious business.
His name is Mike Ramos. He is the DA for San Bernardino County. When we come back, we'll be speaking with James Ramos. He's a new member of the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Yes, we are now joined by James Ramos. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County. Mike Ramos and James Ramos, they call each other primos, but they're not really cousins. But I know you're good friends.
We are.
And more importantly, though, congratulations on a tremendous victory. I know you worked very hard for the seat, and it's historic. Your election is historic. You are the first American Indian elected to a major board of supervisors in the state of California. Hats off to you.
Thank you.
How does this feel? What does this mean to you?
Well, being the first American Indian representing San Bernardino County in the history, it's a big accomplishment, but also being able to see that when you grow up and you go through school and they talk about living that American dream and the participation that you could have in the effects of your local government, is nothing more short of what it is that we're fulfilling now today.
And I think about the plight of the Native Americans over so many years during my lifetime, and how things are finally starting to turn around. My perception, things are finally starting to turn around for Native Americans in California. And you're an example of that, of how the Native American community is really managing to live the American dream.
That's right.
And talk to me about how your community feels.
Well, my parents just barely put together a celebration for me on the Samoa Indian Reservation. We had other tribal members come out and friends and did cultural activities and really honoring the culture and so much as being the first elected there.
I do want to ask you about the board specifically. There are 5 members on your board. 3 of you have been elected in the last 2 cycles. I mean, so it's a really new, young board, a board that had been struggling with ethics scandals. You defeated someone who had been convicted of a misdemeanor. I think he pled to a misdemeanor, not a felony. You know, there are 2 others that are under felony indictment. So how is that for you?
I think it's good. I think what you see now with the board that's there with the 5 members, certainly Josie Gonzalez and Gary Ovitt, our new...
the senior members.
Yeah, and our new chair of the board is Janice Rutherford. Myself and Robert Lovingood are genuinely working together in addressing issues that really affect San Bernardino County as a whole.
At the same time, you enter office, you're trying to get your you know, what is it, your sea legs, whatever the cliche may be, and just a horrible tragedy occurred right in the heart of your district in the Big Bear Mountains. We know the Christopher Dorner, the LAPD officer who went on a rampage, killed a member of your sheriff's department, wreaked havoc on this county. How was that for you? How is the community doing?
The community is living through that, and really it's the family of the San Bernardino County is coming together and really supporting our Sheriff John McMahon and the way that in the decisions that he's made. We're standing 100% behind him. But also certainly we did lose an officer in this crisis, but also we still have a deputy that is in the hospital that we need to make sure that we remember him, and that's Deputy Alex Collins.
And the good news is he is recovering.
He is.
I understand his leg is severely injured, but we expect that he'll be with us for a long time. But of course, we mourn the loss. I believe Jeremiah McKay, is that his name? Of course, our officer went down in Riverside, the city of Riverside. We mourn that. You went to those communities after the incident.
I did.
And what did you hear, feel, see?
I think, you know, when I was at a behavioral health commission, the day that the truck was found in Big Bear Lake burning, right away we were in direct contact with the county sheriff, John McMahon, and ultimately ended up there that night to show the support of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors and the ongoing support that you have, resources to make sure that the job could get done here in San Bernardino County.
And you speak of resources, and you are lamenting the fact that in many of your communities in the county, state budget cuts are impacting justice.
It is.
Impacting justice. Why don't you tell us about that?
One of the big things that we've actually been engaged in and ultimately have garnered the full support of the Board of Supervisors is the issue dealing with court closures in San Bernardino County. In San Bernardino County, you know, the court closure issue and the funding is facing the state of California, but no other county in the state of California has been hit as severe as San Bernardino County.
Why?
because of this inequity funding that's been going on for the last 12 years.
Why?
The caseloads continue to go. So there has to be some intervention at the state level through legislation, or really letting our story be known that this inequity shouldn't be going on, while as the caseloads continue to grow and the state's putting out ratios that we're not able to match those with the funding that we're getting.
But why is it that this county is on the losing end of this inequity?
Those are some of the issues that the County Board of Supervisors approved at this last board meeting, to start to adequately use county resources to identify some of those areas, to come up with some type of solutions and options to move forward. And so working, now there's a big educational component also, because they're called San Bernardino County Superior Courts, doesn't mean that the County Board of Supervisors is the funding mechanism for those courts.
They are not.
They're not. That funding comes directly from the state of California to the San Bernardino Superior Court, and the presiding judge, Slough, has to deal with that budget. So our job is going to be to go into the state legislature to tell our story, to make sure that we get that equity funding back.
We know the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, she has been very vocal about her concerns about court clog and court closures. I'm wondering though, we know that the state budget situation has improved in large part because of an improving economy, as well as Proposition 30's passage. I don't believe Prop 30 dedicated funds to courts, although it did send some money towards prison realignment. It seems like now could be the time to pounce on this issue. I mean, do you feel as if we can see some relief? I
think now is the opportune time to really start to address this issue. The governor actually put together a commission that's going to actually look at this this funding mechanism. So it's time that we start to bring some of those facts out, and to make sure that people understand how severe San Bernardino County has been impacted by this.
So is this something that needs to work through the executive branch, Governor Brown, the judicial branch, the Chief Justice, I forget her name, but she's quite adept.
Judge Slough?
Oh, no, Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. Or does it need to go through the legislature? Richard Roth, Bill Emerson? I mean, who are you talking to?
I think all the above.
And so what now? What next?
So since the County Board of Supervisors did pass that resolution and those steps at the last board meeting, our staff is actually contacting all the different cities and making sure that we get letters of support for that now we could take that mission and that voice to the state legislature and to the commission that the governor has set up. You
know as well as anyone that San Bernardino County is the largest geographic county in the lower 48. It goes all the way to the Arizona border. Does it hit Nevada too, that far north?
It borders those areas. In those areas.
And your district is particularly large in terms of the 5 districts. And so you're trying to create a scenario whereby your constituents can hear and see you, even though they may be hundreds of miles away.
One of the issues that we've actually tackled too within our first 60-something days was making sure that there's adequate representation. And one of the areas is the Morongo Basin, where we actually advocated for a financial study for a video conferencing center out of the government center in Joshua Tree. And just this week, we got full support from the Board of Supervisors to implement the video conferencing center out in Joshua Tree.
Congratulations.
Allowing the Morongo Basin to have that voice in their government. Clearly
you're up and running. I can hear it in your voice. I can feel it in your energy. At the end of 2013, what do you hope to have accomplished? What are your goals for this first year?
Well, I think this first year, I think we're doing a lot of that now early on. We have 2 items that were gone before the full board, and we've been successful in garnering that support there. And again, it's because the full board is working together to address the issues that really face San Bernardino County as a whole. So at the end of 2013, we want to make sure that we're still working together as a board, and there's no doubt that we will be, but addressing all the issues that now face the constituents. And to make sure that we truly do shed that light and we start to turn the page of San Bernardino County history to make it more of a positive reputation than what we've suffered in the past.
It's been a tough couple of years, there's no doubt. His name is James Ramos. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County. He is the first elected American Indian to represent a large county in California. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. County Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad to introduce you to Larry Walker. He is San Bernardino County's Auditor Controller. He is also a candidate for a state Senate seat. There's a special election being held in San Bernardino County as a result of Gloria Negrete-McLeod's election to the U.S. Congress. She leaves the state Senate, moves to Washington, and she has actually endorsed your candidacy, and we congratulate you on that endorsement. Before we talk about the state Senate race, I do want to talk to you about your current job.
Sure.
You've been in it for 14 years. What is the Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, and Tax Collector do in San Bernardino County?
Well, we have a number of different duties. The primary duties relate to the financial operation of the county. We pay the county's bills, we pay the employees, we keep the financial records, and that's on the Auditor Controller side. We also are responsible for internal audits, essentially reviewing operations within the county periodically to assure that they are A, using money wisely, B, following the policies or the dictates that have put those activities into place.
I think it's fair to say that San Bernardino County has maybe seen better days on a variety of fronts. The economy has been challenged. Some of your supervisors have faced criminal indictments. How have you navigated through these difficult times?
Well, that's why the position of Auditor Controller is so important, because to me, poor or lax business practices create a potential area for fraud to occur, for misconduct to occur. That's been the case in the past. I was on the Board of Supervisors, and I became interested in the issue of financial accountability as a control for improving the organization in the county. Now, you can never account for individual decision to do wrong, and we've had some of that in our county, but frankly, we're seeing better days now, and our administration, our Board of Supervisors, we have a new board, my office, we've built up to the point where I think, frankly, we're in a very good position to make major advances.
Do you feel as if we've turned the corner both on the ethical lapses as well as the economy, which has really hit the Inland Empire hard?
The Inland Empire is harder hit than coastal areas of Southern California, and so we're slower coming back, but we are seeing it. We're seeing it in real estate activity. We're seeing it in economic growth. The key now is we're having growth. It's not going up by huge numbers, but I think it's potentially more sustainable in the long run.
What about on the property tax side? Because the county, both Riverside and San Bernardino, really got hit by decreasing property taxes with foreclosures, with a falling sales market. I hear that we're actually starting to see some upticks in the dual county area. Are you seeing that on the property tax side?
The key thing is we're not declining anymore. Because of the way Prop 13 freezes people's values, the decline in value actually took place a couple of years after the declines of real value, because a lot of properties are assessed below their market value.
I understand.
But that notwithstanding, we are seeing, I think this current year that we're in is the first year that we haven't had, last year we had just a slight decline. This year we're going to hold steady, maybe improve a tick. And then I think we'll start seeing gradual and then more substantial improvement over time.
You mentioned Prop 13. And I must ask you, since you're aspiring to go to Sacramento, about Prop 13. Sacramento is a funny place. It has a very powerful tool that the voters can use to effectuate their desire for legislation, which is Prop 13 as an example, passed by voters, not the legislature. There are rumblings about whether we should reevaluate Prop 13, which sets values at a very clear rate and prevents increment increases without the support of voters, 2/3 vote, for example. What do you think about the idea of maybe splitting the roles as it relates to Prop 13? Residential, keep it as is. Commercial, maybe we look differently at how we tax.
Well, first of all, the reason Prop 13 was approved was because before it was approved, there were huge increases in the property taxes that individual homeowners were paying, not because the rates went up, but because their values were driven up by circumstances that they weren't involved in. So that protection has to be maintained. But the other problem is, as was pointed out in a Supreme Court case involving redevelopment a year ago.
We remember it well.
The first 6 pages of that Supreme Court opinion are very telling, because they point out that property taxes were reduced dramatically by Prop 13, and that amount of funding, which used to go to school districts and local governments, has never been replaced in the state's financial picture. And what this state needs right now is a major financial overhaul. Because what we have today is every level of government is fighting over every tax resource. And so there are all kinds of, I mean, we've got things called realignment 1, realignment 2, triple flip. When you've got an accounting, when you've got a budgeting accounting term called triple flip,
can't be good.
Things are not where they should be.
But should we look at a split roll policy?
There's a danger there because the protection of the homeowner has to be paramount. And the question is, what is your goal? Is your goal to adjust fairness between the commercial and industrial sector and the private and the home sector, which has been evolving to a larger share of the total, or are you looking to enhance revenue for the state?
Probably both.
Well, see, I think we have to be careful about further revenue enhancements at this point because Prop 30 was passed on the basis that we've got to do this to solve the problems in the state. And my argument is, let's make sure we're doing everything we can with Prop 30 and the existing income that's occurring and use economic growth to enhance that before we get back into talking about tax increases.
So let's talk about taxes as well in a more general sense. If you look at the business climate, you look at the business surveys, what you see is California gets pretty clobbered as it relates to being a, quote, unfriendly, business unfriendly state. But when you dig a little deeper, what the business advocates are saying is that in terms of taxing, yeah, California's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's the regulation where California really gets hammered as a state that it over-regulates. I don't know if that's true. I'm just telling you what the business folks say. At the same time, though, you have California voters who've been very clear that they cherish their coasts, they cherish their mountains, they cherish the green space that we have. So how, if you were to make it to Sacramento, would you balance that desire to spur business activity with a desire to keep California clean and green?
Well, California has, we've heard different numbers characterized, but there's general agreement. California as a separate nation would have the 7th, 8th, whatever that number is, largest economy in the world. We're doing something right here, and we're doing a lot of it. Obviously, the environmental assets that we have in this state are one of the main reasons that people want to be here, want to live here, want to work here, produce here. When we talk about regulation, what we need to do is focus on what's the goal of the regulation and is it accomplishing it. If you're taxing every little activity that happens, is that a good tax system, or should we have one tax on the overall activity and then not have a system that's so intense on administration?
But even aside from the taxing issue, it's just the pure regulatory authorities that, what I am told, just clamp down on every ticky-tack violation.
That's the key. They have to be looked at in context. We have to assure that we're getting real value for regulation. There are regulations that really protect an important value in our society, whether it's the safety of workers, whether it's some environmental value, but we've got to make sure that the regulations don't just create procedure or delay or other things with no benefit.
But it's interesting because I've spoken with Republicans for many years, and they're always pounding the desk about we need to regulatory reform. Over the last couple of years, I've been speaking with Democrats, and they're saying the same thing. Even Governor Brown, the Democrat, is saying that he said this, there are too many damn regulations. And so should you join your friends in Sacramento, will regulatory reform be one of the issues that you'd like to tackle?
Absolutely, because the bottom line is you can look at 10 different things and every regulation may make sense. But if you look at all 10 together and compare them to the economic growth that's occurring and what their impact is, it's just like budgeting. We have to make priority decisions. We can't have everything we want. We have to see what the total cost is and how it relates to what we're trying to accomplish in the state.
In our final moments, you are running in a district with probably 800,000 to 900,000 people. It's geographically spread out. It's not a tight urban district. What are your voters saying?
Well, my voters are concerned. The 32nd district, the old 32nd district that we're running in, is not that different from the new 20th that will occur in 2014. These are hardworking people. They want a job. They want to be able to raise a family. They want a safe community. They want their kids to get a good education so they can be competitive. If we can grow the economy, begin to repair the educational system, and bring good transportation facilities to the area, we'll be plugged in.
His name is Larry Walker. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition.